The prosecution calls Officer Lee Stroud to the stand.
Yes.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, officer. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Officer Lee Stroud, S.T.R.A.D.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm currently a sergeant for the Des Moines Police Department.
Could you explain a little bit about your background for us?
Well, prior to joining the police department, I served in the U.S. Army for 8 years, which actually inspired me to join the police department, which is where I've held the rank of sergeant for the past 12 years.
And what types of things do you do on a regular basis as a sergeant?
I investigate vandalism, burglary, criminal mischief, and suspicious deaths.
So, officer, let's talk about why we're here today. Were you on duty July 2nd of 2013?
I was.
And were you called to investigate anything in particular?
I received a phone call at 10:32 a.m. that morning informing me that the Emergency Response Center had fielded a 911 call at 10:14 a.m. that morning. The caller had indicated to them that a woman had collapsed and was in cardiac arrest at a building located at 405 6th Avenue in downtown Des Moines.
And who were the first people to arrive on the scene?
The EMTs arrived first and determined that Charlene Baskerville was dead on arrival.
So when did you arrive on scene?
Very shortly after I received my phone call.
And officer, what did you find when you got there?
As I said, Charlene Baskerville was dead on arrival. There was nothing I could do there, so I commenced my investigation by conducting interviews.
And when exactly did you conduct these interviews?
Almost immediately after the crime had occurred.
Who did you interview first?
I first interviewed Devin Baskerville.
Who is she?
She's the daughter of the victim, Charlene Baskerville.
Did you obtain any information from her?
She was very distraught as her mother had just died, so I did only ask her a few basic questions.
Did she make any specific requests?
She demanded that I shut Mr. Funt down because his pranks had finally gone too far.
Now you mentioned the defendant, Alan Funt. Is he in the room?
He is.
Could you point him out for the record?
He's sitting right over there with the glasses.
Let the record reflect that Officer Stroud has identified Alan Funt. And did you interview anybody else?
I interviewed 3 bystanders, Dwight Dinkla, Harry Shipley, and Cynthia Mosier. They had limited information as they weren't inside of the elevator, but they did inform me that there had been an out-of-order sign on the real elevator, which was no longer present when I got there.
Had you interviewed anybody else, officer?
I interviewed Ashton Michael, the main actor involved in this scene, and that's when I really got suspicious.
Why were you suspicious, officer?
Well, the fact that he had indicated to me that he was an actor seemed out of place, and the fact that someone had died during this acting seemed out of place as well.
Had anyone explained to you how the scene was intended to work?
Alan Funt explained it to me himself, and Ashton Michael corroborated that.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with purposes of entering proposed Exhibit 6?
You may.
Let the record reflect I'm showing the opposing counsel proposed Exhibit 6. Let the record reflect I'm handing the witness proposed Exhibit 6. Officer, could you please tell us what Exhibit 6 is?
This is a diagram of the fake elevator that was used on July 2nd.
And how do you know?
I investigated inside of this elevator.
Who created this document?
Mr. Funt himself gave it to me through the course of my investigation.
And is this a true and accurate depiction of what you saw that day?
It's not drawn exactly to scale, obviously, as it is the plan of what was intended to be happening inside of the elevator that day. It is fair and accurate.
Thank you, officer. Prosecution now moves to enter proposed Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted.
Permission to post an enlargement,
Granted.
and permission to let the witness stand down and testify to the exhibit.
Okay, that's fine.
Officer, could you please point and describe to us how this scene was intended to work?
What would happen is the passengers would step inside, the lights would go off and it would shake, but it would feel as if it was going up. At that point, the actor, Ashton Michael, would slip in through a fake door in the back. The door isn't shown in this picture, but it was in the back of the elevator, unseen of the passengers inside. After this happened, he would be dressed as a ghost, the lights would turn back on, he would scare the people inside, the lights would again turn back on, he would slip out through the same door, and it would appear as if nothing had happened.
Thank you, officer. Officer, had Ashton Michael indicated whether or not he had recognized the Baskervilles?
He indicated that the younger one, Devin, had looked familiar.
And how did Mr. Funt and Ashton Michael communicate inside the elevator?
They communicated through an earpiece, and Mr. Funt instructed Ashton to give it all you've got.
And had Ashton Michael indicated how the Baskervilles responded inside the elevator?
He indicated that Devin had noticed him first and screamed. Not a split second later, Charlene noticed him and almost immediately crumpled to the floor.
And did he stop the prank when Miss Baskerville crumpled to the floor?
He continued until the scene was completely over.
Now, officer, did you ever get a chance to interview the defendant?
I did.
And what came of that conversation?
He corroborated the manner in which the elevator would take place.
Had he indicated whether or not he had recognized the Baskervilles?
He admitted that when they entered the lobby, he did recognize them, and even with this recognition, or perhaps because of it, he gave the green light, saying we have a couple of live ones to continue on with the scene as planned.
And did he continue on with the scene?
He did.
So, officer, let's talk about the charges. What did you do after your visit to the crime scene?
As it is not part of my job to make the final charge, I submitted my report to my commanding officer, Captain Guy Cook.
And what happened when you talked to your commander?
He submitted the findings to the Polk County Attorney's Office, and after reviewing the information, the Polk County Attorney's Office filed the charge of involuntary manslaughter against Alan Funt.
And did you make the arrest?
A few days later.
So let's talk about the defendant. Were you familiar with him prior to July 2nd?
I was.
How so?
Beginning earlier this spring, I've had almost weekly occurrences with the defendant. People are growing more aggravated with his pranks. People are even getting hurt. I've issued countless warnings, all to no avail.
Do you have any examples of these warnings?
There was a galloning incident, a convenience store incident. This is Mr. Funt's business. He sets up video pranks on unsuspecting people, sacrificing their safety, all in an attempt to scare them and catch their reactions on video.
So, officer, based upon your knowledge of this investigation, did you determine if the act of capturing fear in this fake elevator was dangerous?
Yes, Mr. Funt clearly should have known after my countless warnings that there would likely be consequences, especially when he lured unsuspecting passengers into a small enclosed space. And unfortunately, what was sacrificed in this case was the victim's life.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
Very good. Cross-examination?